Is expansion back on the table for the Big 12? Well, not officially, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports, covering the Big 12 Conference. Thanks for being here. So on Friday, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark had a press conference, and in this press conference, he said something very interesting. It's something he has said for the better part of the last 3 years. Brett Yormark said the Big 12 is open for business, but it wasn't just that. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said, quote, and I'm reading this, when I took this job, I said the Big 12 was open for business. And I guess you could say we're open for business now more than ever before. This was an unprompted statement on Friday afternoon in a press conference I was in with Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. And the reason that Brett Yormark held this press conference was to announce the revenue numbers for the Big 12, which hit a record high, and to talk about just where the league is at, where it's been, really the present and the future of the Big 12. And it was a very well done, very good press conference. But that question, or that answer, I should say, the comment stood out to me because it was Brett Yormark doubling down on something that he said for the last 2 years. He got the job in 22, and it was the infamous quote from Brett Yormark right after he got the job. The Big 12 is open for business. And that was interpreted in many sectors as Brett Yormark saying and signaling he's going hunting. He admitted and doubled down on it last year, 2023, at Big 12 Media Days. Said the Big 12 is still open for business. Weeks later, what happened? Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, come on in. So for him to unpromptedly say the Big 12 is open for business and open for business now more than ever before, that's telling to me from Brett Yormark. That signals to me that Brett Yormark is still big game hunting. Now, I asked him in this press conference as a follow-up, I said, is the Big 12 actively exploring expansion? And his quote to me, his answer was, no, I'm not. Then he says, we explore every and all opportunity to create value for our members, for our student athletes. It's what we've been doing since I onboarded, and we'll continue to have that mindset. Now, he's not going to tell me or tell us that, we're out there, we're actively exploring expansion, life's great. But the fact that he went there unprompted, the fact that Brett Yormark said the Big 12 is open for business more than ever, considering he said that the last 2 years and they added 4 teams, it tells you where his mind is at. It tells you that he smells blood in the water. And that's where Brett Yormark is at. Brett Yormark smells blood in the water with the ACC. He sees a conference right now that is on the brink. He sees a conference right now that is on the verge potentially of having a Pac-12-esque explosion. When USC and UCLA bolted for the Big Ten, it was more or less only a matter of time for the Pac-12. And if Florida State and Clemson bolt, guess what? It's only a matter of time for the ACC. And that's where that league is at right now. And Brett Yormark senses and smells and understands what's going on. And the Big 12 is going to be aggressive. That's one thing you've got to hand to Brett Yormark. He has always been incredibly aggressive when talking about the future of this conference. And Linda Livingstone, Baylor president, was also in this press conference with Brett Yormark, and she waxed poetic about the guy. And listen, we all understand. Brett Yormark hasn't quite batted 1,000. Nobody does. Hell, I don't think my wife bats 1,000, so I'm not going to say Brett Yormark bats 1,000, but he's obviously done incredible work for this league and for this conference. He's been almost perfect. He's messed up a couple things I don't agree with, but that's okay. None of us should agree with every politician. We shouldn't agree with every corporate honcho, every commissioner, every athlete, whatever. Like, you don't agree with your spouse and everything. So I'm certainly not going to agree with Brett Yormark and everything, but it's indisputable. He has done a tremendous job for this conference in his nearly 2 years on the job. And I can't believe it's not even been 2 years officially. It's just nuts to me how much has gone on in the sport. And in college athletics at large over the last 2 years. I feel like Brett Yormark's been here for a decade, but it's been 2 years. So now you ask yourself, where and why? I think Brett Yormark's just waiting. I think he's sitting there and he's waiting, and he's trying to figure out what's going to happen with Florida State and Clemson. That's what I'd be doing. And I don't think it's insane to sit here and wonder if the Big 12 could be in the mix for either or both of those two schools. You might think that's crazy, but when you look at the Big 12, you look at the SEC, I'm not convinced the SEC is intent on any kind of expansion right now. I don't know if they would really want to do that. Now, they may do it just to prevent the Big 12 from landing those two schools. They may do it just to prevent the Big 10 from landing two schools in the SEC footprint. But I'm not convinced the SEC wants to go there. So the Big 12 could end up being very aggressive and very competitive in the college sports landscape when it comes to schools like Florida State and like Clemson. It's something to keep an eye on as we move forward in this conversation, because it's just getting started. We're just still in the infancy of what that conference is going to look like. But it's very clear right now. There's the SEC, there's the Big 10, and there's the Big 12. The Pac-2 doesn't exist. It's not a thing anymore. It's the Mountain West with two teams. And then the ACC is dealing with a ton of drama. And one thing that was very clear in this press conference is that this league is intent on building its brand around equity within this conference. Big 12 leadership, and Yormark alluded to this in the press conference, understands that the Big 12's summation of teams is greater than the individual parts. There is not a true blue blood in this conference. Now, I would make the case that over the last 15 to 20 years, Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas State have arguably been blue blood-esque. Like, is Nebraska really a blue blood when they haven't done anything in 15 years? Texas didn't do a damn thing for the most part till last year. They were considered a blue blood. But I hate the way the sports media hierarchy in college football in particular creates this like blue blood mentality around teams. They go 8-4 every year and they are considered blue bloods. But anyway, that's a sidebar conversation. The Big 12 realizes that this league is stronger together than it is trying to create a new blue blood. And that was made clear when they talked about the revenue distribution. And they talked about how, and Livingston addressed this, as did Yormark, that they want to make sure that they are not creating a league of haves and have-nots. They don't want a Vanderbilt in the Big 12. The Big 12 doesn't have a Vanderbilt right now. It doesn't have a Mississippi State. It doesn't have a Rutgers. It just doesn't have that. And that actually helps this league because, as Yormark talked about in this press conference, he believes come November, you could have half the league vying for a spot in the Big 12 championship game in November. That's going to make the Big 12 very unique. That's not going to be the case in the SEC or the Big 10. I can promise you that's not going to be the case for those conferences. It will likely be the case for the Big 12. So now you look at it and you say, okay, how do we make sure this conference continues to grow together, grow as one? And part of that is monetarily, what do you do? And Yormark announced that the newcomers, Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, and UCF this year are each going to get $18 million. Next year, they'll get $19 million. Then they'll be fully vested for the following year, 2025, 2026. So that leaves the original 10 members splitting about $398 million. That's give or take $40 million per school. So double. But those four newcomers are going to get up to speed monetarily very quickly. And that's still about or more than double where they were in the AAC. So they're ramping up their athletics programs. And frankly, UCF is a sleeping giant. BYU is a national brand, although, there's some hurdles there. And then Houston and Cincinnati have had incredible success in the last few years at the lower level. So they can still get there. And if they have the tens of millions of dollars these other schools are going to have in the next couple of years, they can ramp that thing up fast. But it clearly was important to the Big 12 that they get all these teams on an equal playing field quickly, because that will continue the parity that's going to make this league great for the foreseeable future. So that excited me as much as anything, understanding the model that's going to make the Big 12 wildly entertaining. It's not about whether or not the Big 12 is going to have the most college football playoff teams. It's not going to have the most college football playoff teams. That is highly unlikely, nearly impossible to suggest that's going to be the case. But it can have the most parity. It can have the most entertainment. Friday night football in the Big 12 can be must-watch TV as the season progresses. And it can be, from a pure entertainment standpoint, the most entertaining and fun league in America. And as Josh Pate has famously called it, our buddy who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, if you missed it, check out the YouTube, check out the podcast, America's Conference. And that's what you love to see. I'm Pete Mundo at heartlandcollegesports.com. It is great to be here with you. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on YouTube, on the podcast. We so appreciate you doing that and sharing this with just one friend. That helps this show grow every single week. We are reaching millions of Big 12 fans on a monthly basis on all our platforms, and that's in large part because of you. And make sure you are also hopping on the Heartland College Sports forums. We have a brand new website. We revamped the whole thing. If you haven't seen it lately, it is looking fresh. It is looking fine. And the forums are popping because of you. So make sure you're getting on there and joining us in the conversation at Heartland College Sports. Thank you guys for being here. Have a great day. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening in the Big 12. So make sure you stay here with us. We'll keep you posted on everything going on, and we'll talk to you soon. I'm Pete Mundo. Go Big 12.